second? We have a second. We need a 2/3 majority.
Just real quick, I'm going to be in the back to help people get their money. So that they don't.
Okay, I apologize. Apparently we don't actually. We're good to go. Capable, Governor, capable. Would you like to get us started?
No vote?
No vote.
No vote, okay. I guess before we start all this and everything, I just want to make it clear that we're not questioning the competency of our elections committee whatsoever. I think they've done a very good job this year and they've worked very hard on this. I want to be very clear that that's not what we're doing. We just want to make sure the best decision is made for the debate, for the students and the student body. So I guess in doing that, as Professor Brewster was saying, we want to make sure that we increase transparency in this election as much as we possibly can. We don't have a lot of power in this, and that's why we put the elections committee there where they are. However, I think providing students with the most amount of information on the candidates is essential to cultivating a more educated electorate. I think it's essential that we do that and give all the candidates that are going to be participating in the election a chance to speak to the student body, to let them express how they feel and what they're running on. So I guess in that, I would just like to have the elections committee maybe kind of describe what was involved in making this decision. Maybe if they could kind of designate the difference between an official and unofficial candidate, as well as just kind of describe what went into making this decision. And
Before we have Elections Chair Harrison come to the front mic here, what we give something to say.
Obviously, I missed the discussion earlier, but being that I've been working on the elections code and going through a lot of the process of working on what will be a new process for writing candidates, personally, I feel that we should entrust this decision in the elections committee with what they stand. What they deem official and unofficial is kind of blurry this year, but in the future, what I'll be proposing is that, and this is something that the elections committee has worked with me on creating, is an official and unofficial way to determine write-in candidates. And it's the way the Secretary of State's office does it in the state of West Virginia. There's an application to be a write-in candidate, and it's just a simple application. It's your name, your basic information, that kind of thing. It would be turned in the day of the candidates meeting, so if something like happened this year where someone didn't meet the signature requirements or what the new process will be for the signature requirements, they would submit an application the day of the candidates meeting. It just makes the elections committee aware of who is running as a write-in candidate, because the problem as it currently stands is that theoretically every single student at this university can run as a write-in candidate. So how do we allow people to participate in a debate when we don't necessarily know who's a write-in candidate and who's not? Yes, there are people who are campaigning as a write-in candidate, but that doesn't mean that someone else couldn't be elected who isn't necessarily on the ballot. So I think that's perhaps an unfair advantage to other people who are going to be write-in candidates that we may or may not be part of a ticket. And an independent candidate is something different. An independent candidate is a official candidate through the process, went through the signature process, paid their filing fee, all of that. And I understand the concern, and that's part of the reason why there needs to be an official and unofficial write-in policy, and hence why we're working on one to be passed in the next couple of weeks. But that way, at least the elections committee is aware of who is going to be a write-in candidate, and that's what would deem someone official and unofficial. And then perhaps the discussion would be more legitimate on whether or not someone can participate in the debate or not, simply because there would be a official and unofficial write-in policy.
May I? Yes, follow-up. Are independent candidates allowed to participate in the debate?
Yes,
And
they are official candidates.
And I have a quick response to that analogy there between the process we have and the process the Secretary of State has. I think our vice chair could tell you that whenever he signed up to file his papers, I was in the room with him. He did not have to get 737 signatures in order to do that, which is an arbitrary number for all means and purposes. But I think what we really need to consider tonight, where we don't have an official policy on write-ins, is what type of message do we want to send as a student government? Do we want to tell people that, well, you were one signature short, you were 10 signatures short, so your voice is not going to be heard, because that's the message I hear loud and clear tonight. And I mean, I understand Governor Wimpy's concerns, but that is the implication of what we're saying. We're an organization that has struggled with getting people involved for years, and I think we've done a much better job at that year. But we're trying to reach out to students, and it really does not send a very positive message when we're saying, well, we're gonna exclude you from the debate. We're gonna exclude your voice just because you did not meet an arbitrary number of signatures. And that's my problem with this argument here.
I would like to say that I really want to hear from those that aren't running in this election, because I personally would like to give my opinion, but I don't want to seem like a biased party to this whole process. And I really think it's important for those in the gallery to talk as well, to really hear what everybody is saying. So I just really want to hear from other members of the
Is
board.
that something that you were hoping to hear tonight?
Yeah, I don't want to speak. I know several others
Yeah.
don't want to speak to get
Yeah.
conflict with this.
I'm all for discussion. I'd like to allow 3 more questions. I just don't want to turn it into a Senate hearing. This, as Governor Wimpy touched on, this will be a topic that we'll be addressing in the future. I love the discussion, but hopefully 3 more questions and we'll talk about it in future weeks. Governor Riddle.
Chair. Like Governor Capel said, I would really like to hear all the information first, because I feel like what we can all agree on is that that's what's lacking. We don't know exactly what the reason is. I think a lot of us probably don't even have a strong opinion on this quite yet, because we simply don't have the information. So if we could hear from the gallery and also from the elections chair to hear the logic behind their decision, I think that would probably help a lot of us make a better educated decision.
Governor Wimpy.
I personally don't think this is an unfair message sending that we don't want students' voices to be heard, simply because every candidate that unfortunately is not on the ballot this year, they received a signature packet, they received an elections code, they signed a contract saying they understood everything that was written in that elections code. Be it whether you agree with the signature process or not, they signed on to participate as it stands. And as it stands, that's what the election code says. And the amendment process is something that we are working on. I will not deny that the elections code is extremely flawed. But that is something we're working on. But unfortunately for this year's election, if this was a problem, it should have been addressed prior to the election.
One last question from Governor Evans, and then Election Chair Harrison, would you like a chance to speak?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. I figured you would. Governor Evans.
While I agree with Governor Wimpy in saying that you're correct, I do agree that this should have been dealt with ahead of time. But the thing is that we didn't have a standard operating procedure, because this hasn't happened. There hasn't been a day that the university has closed down the school and told us that it was unsafe for us to travel to classes. And I think that it's safe to assume that if it's unsafe for us to travel back and forth between classes, it's also unsafe for us to go and gather signatures. And I think that since there isn't a standard operating procedure, that this is worthy of discussion. And I'm not saying that a decision is going to overturn any decision that's made by the elections committee, because I don't think that that's necessarily what we should be doing. But I think that since we are going through an amendment process, it is nice to have everybody's input. Thank you.
Election Chair Harrison.
All right. So first I'll just give my testimony, and then I'll open it up with the discretion of the chair to answer any questions.
A few.
A few, okay, whatever you limit it to. So this entire process started almost a month, if not more than a month ago. 39 individuals picked up a signature packet. They filled out 4 appendices that are located at the back of the elections code. Every single one of them signed it, and obviously them signing it made it clear that they understood and read the elections code. I will agree with Governor Wimpy's statement that there are some flaws in this elections code. However, the sections that dictate whether you become a candidate on the ballot or not are pretty explicit. There was a judicial board hearing on February 11th regarding this. There was a lot of talk about whether the signature process dictated whether you're a dedicated student, whether you're worthy of being on the ballot. All of these discussions can be made on whether does 800 signatures mean you're dedicated enough? Does 200 signatures mean you're dedicated enough? And we've been having discussions like this for thousands of years. It's called the Socrates paradox. And one of the solutions to that is to set an exact number that you have to do to attain the goal. And we did that. Everyone agreed to it. And so the consequence for some people, it's not meeting the goal, is that they are not on the ballot. The judicial board heard all of this. It was 3 or 4 hours. They came to a decision and upheld the decision made by the elections committee. On February 9th, the decision was made on what it meant to be a write-in candidate, what opportunities official candidates would have that write-in candidates wouldn't have. And there's only 2. That's that you are not located on the official ballot and you cannot participate in the debate. 16 days had passed between informing these people of their inability to participate in the debate until we heard any official response from anyone, period. Last year, the SGA Elections Committee sponsored the debate, and there were no written down rules, and so that's why we decided that we needed to have rules. But one of the rules dictating that official candidates were the only ones being able to participate did not deviate from what was said in the February 9th memorandum sent to everyone, including the write-in candidates. Albeit there was some miscommunication in regards to whether they could receive back their filing fees. In the email sent out prior to the candidates meeting, I informed the write-in individuals they're not obligated to attend, but if they were to attend and they informed me they could get their filing fee back, but obviously I should have sent out a follow-up email informing them that they could still get their filing fee back because they are not obligated to pay that money, and they still are, by all means, able to get that back. Additionally, the Elections Committee has no monopoly on debates. You know, if the NAB2 wanted to host one, they could do that. If WVU Today wanted to host one, if University Relations wanted to host one, we are the only body who's gone through the entire process to set up and are planning on having one next Monday. For the comments additionally, about whether it is so detrimental for a write-in candidate not to be able to participate, I just did some quick math. During the active campaign period, there's 11 days beginning this past Monday and finishing up with next Thursday with the close at polls. And that's 11 days. A conservative estimate, maybe work on your campaign for 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day. So that's, you know, that's about 60 hours roughly. That's 4,000 minutes. This is 1.5 minutes that you're being afforded during the debate. And within that time, you probably get and ask thousands of questions, and you only get one during the debate. So is it really that detrimental for a write-in candidate to not be inserted into our debate?
Governor Capel, and we'll get Governor Evans, and then a third. Just 3 questions, please keep them brief.
Go ahead.
Comments, I apologize.
Yeah, I agree 100% that, I mean, the people who didn't finish the signature process, they didn't follow the rules. Therefore, they shouldn't be allowed on the ballot and they shouldn't be allowed to be a part of a political party. I'm not disputing that at all. I think that's definitely justified and it's even set up in the rules. The only thing that I'm disputing is the fact that debate